Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Julie Livingston here for the Quorum Initiative for another episode of Quorum Live, our semi regular conversations with Quorum members and friends, where we share lots of tips and takeaways on how to boost your career. The Quorum Initiative is an international association of professional women seeking to spark change in the workplace. We look to create a more direct path to leadership for women professionals. To We want to really focus on investing in women owned and women led companies. And importantly, we want to increase the visibility of women on corporate boards, which leads us to our discussion today, which I'm going to invite our guests on, Deborah Boggs and Michelle Merritt. And let me tell you a little bit about them. As the founder and CEO of DNS Executive Career Management, Deborah Boggs is a recognized expert in executive resume, board bio, and job search strategy by the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, Fast Company, the Huffington Post, and many others. In addition to serving as an international speaker and guest for top rated podcasts, she was recently honored by Forbes as a Next 1000 entrepreneur and is a member of the Forbes Business Council. So, welcome, Deborah.
Thank you so much, Julie. Happy to be here.
Michelle Merritt is Chief Strategy Officer of Executive Career Management, and drawing upon her 20-year corporate career as a Fortune 500 recruiter and corporate culture executive. Well, that's something that companies really grapple with today. Michelle, Michelle provides a wealth of experience to executive clients. As Chief Strategy Officer for DNS Executive Career Management, she guides a team of 15 writers and coaches in supporting executive leaders through the end to end job search process, from resume writing to negotiating offers. As a sought after speaker and trainer, Michelle is a trusted source for leading edge trends affecting senior level job seekers and board candidates. So Michelle and I had the pleasure of meeting through a client of mine
We
for
did.
whom I developed their LinkedIn content strategy and ghostwrite their LinkedIn content. So we worked together on updating this person's profile because she was looking for additional corporate board roles.
Mhm.
So anyway, delighted to see you both. Maybe you can first address strategizing toward recreating your LinkedIn profile, because that is the first thing a board recruiter or other leader who is looking for appropriate board candidates is going to look for. How do you strategize around that? Deborah, maybe you could start us off.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk about this. And I think there's several things you need to think about, but LinkedIn is one of those things that is our first opportunity to provide a strong first impression. And I think we forget about that a lot because we spend a lot of time on the board resume. You think about networking and your elevator pitch, but really, as you said actually off air earlier, board level recruiters and board leaders are going to look at our LinkedIn profiles first. So we really need to think about what that profile is communicating about us. When we work with our clients on board level LinkedIn profiles, we're looking at it from three lenses. It's the content to position you for the boards you're looking for, right? You want to be writing your story, communicating exactly what it is you're looking for and how you're uniquely equipped to deliver on that, but also the optimization to make sure you're showing up in potential searches. Use keywords, use skill sections, maximize your visibility in your headline. That's really heavily keyword weighted. And then finally, the visual presence of your profile, right? And we can dig into this. I know Michelle has a lot more information on. Your headshot needs to be current and professional. You need to have a background photo. You need to have a featured section. And I know Michelle can dig into these things, but it's really three prongs, right? It's the content, it's the optimization, and it's the visual identity. Those three things working together will make a much stronger profile.
Thank you, Deborah. And so let's get to the headshot, because this is something that a lot of people kind of forget about, or they have an old headshot that, it may not be the most current. It could be 3, 4 years old, but it seems to be sufficient. Michelle, what do you think about that?
So, fun story. Deborah and I were at a conference this fall, and we didn't know, we knew several people virtually, but had not met with many of them IRL, if you will. And so we would pull up people's LinkedIn profiles first before we would meet them. And so
Of
we were
course.
looking for the person that was in the photo.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many times someone walked up to us and we didn't know who they were.
Mm-hmm.
Different hair color, different whatever.
Hair color. The photo was maybe pre-pandemic, and maybe now we're not coloring our hair anymore. Maybe somebody shaved their head, or there was a variety of reasons. And so you want to make sure that whoever you're meeting with isn't caught off guard
Mm-hmm.
by your profile picture not matching what you look like today. So we advise clients every 18 months, give or take, to update that photo on average. Right now, I certainly think at the senior executive level, having a professional portrait, professional headshot is a good thing. A lot of people can work magic with the photo settings on your iPhone. So if you don't have access to a professional photographer, a friend who's good with their smartphone can make a difference for you. But a couple of things to keep in mind. You want it to be only you. Please, for God's sake, stop posting selfies. And make sure that you are looking at the camera. If you can, position the photo in such a way that you're looking in toward the profile, if that makes sense. So based on where your profile picture is positioned in the on the page, make sure you're turned in such a way that you're looking in toward it. So you're looking at the person from your photo, right?
I love that.
And Julie, you had mentioned before about the banner image when we were offline a little bit ago. We were talking about the banner image.
Yeah, the banner meaning the background behind your headshot. This is what I call underutilized or unused real estate to really telegraph your message.
Yeah,
absolutely. And that can be a photo of something that you're passionate about, that sort of thing, but it can be a customized banner. Right. And again, AI can help you with that. You can use Canva for that. There are a lot of different tools you can use. Your company may have something, contact your marketing department, that they want you to be using as a banner image so that there's consistency across the organization, which is what we do at DNS.
Yeah. And I have a fun, quick story about how your headline or your background photo, your headshot is what I'm trying to say, is really telegraphing something about you, right? People are looking at your headshot and they're making assumptions about you, right? And that's why it's really important to think about, okay, how would you walk into an interview is really what that headshot should look like. And we had a client a couple of years ago getting ready to launch her board search. And she called and said, I need help with LinkedIn. And I said, great, you've come to the right place. We can absolutely help you with this. And she said, no, you have no idea how much help I need. And
so, I know this story.
And so she was not a regular LinkedIn user, didn't need it for her career, kind of heads down. So I know that all of you on this LinkedIn Live are not in that boat, but I think it's still an important story to remember that people are making assumptions about us, because she was having a dinner party and had accidentally, somehow, has no idea how, taken the online picture of the lasagna recipe she was making and made it her headshot on LinkedIn.
Oh my gosh.
But she was a global brand leader for a well-known fashion brand. And so she's a very visible person. And so even though she wasn't using LinkedIn, people were seeing the lasagna and assuming, because she is who she is, that she had done it for some esoteric branding reason. They thought there was a reason she was using lasagna. And she didn't know for 2 months because she wasn't using LinkedIn. And it wasn't until she was at an industry party that someone junior came up to her and said, oh, I'm so excited to meet you. I've been dying to ask you why you chose lasagna and not something more elevated like surf and turf. And she's like, what are you talking about?
So that's a great tip. Look at your profile on a regular basis.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So you never know what people are making assumptions about.
Right.
What about posting on a regular basis? Do you encourage your clients to do that as well?
Deborah, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I'm happy to talk a little bit about this. I think what I see a lot of people do is get so bogged down in making sure their posting strategy is perfect that they shut down and don't do anything. Or they spend an an inordinate amount of time making it perfect, or doing original thought leadership, or trying to launch a newsletter. And really what's going to drive the needle, if you find yourself getting bogged down in the details and you're afraid that it needs to be perfect, is really your better time spent on LinkedIn is going to be engaging and growing your network. So engaging with your current network, leaving comments. And every time you leave a comment, a thoughtful comment, your headshot, your name, and your headline are following you everywhere on LinkedIn. And so it's growing your visibility that way. And it's kind of staying top of mind with your network. And then sending connection requests and building meaningful conversations with people as you start building out a network is also incredibly important. And so if you find yourself kind of bogged down in, what do I post about? No one cares. Is it going out into the void? Start with engagement, and it'll make it easier.
Completely agree. The other thing I'll add to that is, if you do want to start posting, ask yourself what your audience is looking for, right? So what does your audience want to hear about? My audience wants to hear about resumes. They want to hear about executive job search strategies, board work, salary negotiation, things like this. So I stay in my lane, so to speak, and make a point to keep my posts focused around the things that I know people are looking for, or the people that I want to be looking at my profile are looking for. So if you're looking for board recruiters and board organizations seeking board members to be looking at your profile, start posting about things that matter to boards.
Yes, absolutely.
So let's go to the headline, because this is something that can trip people up a lot, and is so important when looking for a corporate board role. Michelle, do you want to take this one?
Sure. So one of the things I think is important to note is, and I was just in a LinkedIn training for the LinkedIn Top Voices training last week, and one of the things they pointed out was that the headline is one of the most optimized parts of your profile. So what does that mean? It means that LinkedIn is allowing the rest of the internet to search those profile headlines, right? So we want to make sure that those headlines really do have the right information. Now, there's a character limit to that headline, so you want to be strategic. But if you are a board candidate, you need to include that in your headline of your profile. If you are a board director, you need to include that in your headline. Make sure that what you're including is quality information that someone would search if they went to a Google search. Now, the flip side to that is you also want to make sure that the cutesy, slightly cheesy quotes that you've put in your headline first are taken out, right? You can share something that inspires you in the about section,
right?
But I would avoid putting it in the headline. Would you agree, Deborah?
I would, and I also feel that way about emojis as well. I think emojis in a headline have a purpose for some people that want to get noticed in different areas, but for a board director, your audience is going to be a little more conservative, and we need to play to that as well.
You want to keep it serious and sophisticated.
We want to keep it serious and sophisticated, and that doesn't mean that you can't have some personality in your LinkedIn profile. But again, that's the about section. That's in other areas of your profile. It's not necessarily in the front and center first thing about you. The other thing you want to think about is anything, if you're looking for a specific industry or you're an expert in a specific industry, things like that, we want to make sure we're focused on those words. Aspiring board director probably doesn't say enough, right? But aspiring board director for the biotech industry, delivering rapid growth or something like that gives it a little bit more context.
Do you have do you sway more toward a headline that is a series of words separated by an uppercase I, or a statement, or does it not matter as long as you get all the most important things in there?
I think it depends. I think just a giant blurb of keywords is not saying much, right? But I think a strategic mix of a statement of, who you are, what you do, and who you do it for, and then maybe a couple of keywords to make sure you're showing up in the right searches is great. Sometimes you see someone use all 220 characters and it's just a bunch of keywords. That's not really telling a story about you.
That's a point well taken. I'm going to revisit mine as a result of what you just said, actually.
I'm honestly just thinking, wow, I wonder what mine has out there right now. Yeah. So even though we do this every day, we still have to go back and keep ours up to date. And I think that's really one of the points you're making here, Julie, is that it is important to make sure that you're staying on top of this and not just putting it on a shelf for 2 months to find out that you have lasagna posted as your profile.
I can't believe that story. So, if you have a common name like mine, and Michelle, I know you have an amazing story to share in this. How do you differentiate yourself from other Julie Livingstons? And there are a number of them. How do you
Right.
differentiate yourself?
So there are a couple things, right? Number one, you can use the URL to shorten. You can shorten your own URL and customize it, right? If you have a more common name, like you and I do, Julie, there are likely several of us out there. So if you have not already shortened your URL, you may not get just LinkedIn/in/your name, right? So you might have to work with it a little bit. You can put some numbers in there. You can put, if you're a CPA, you can put the CPA initials after your name, something like that. So you can customize that URL. Why is this so important? And I think before I go to that fun story, what I will also say is use your headline, use your photo, use the banners, the things we've been talking about at the top, because as Deborah said, that's what follows you everywhere. When you comment, when you engage, those things are following you everywhere. And you want people to know they have the right Julie Livingston, Michelle Merritt, Deborah Box, right? And yes, I got an email from Google about a year and a half ago now, that I have a Google search out there, Google alert out there for my name. And there were headlines popping up all over the global media, naked pictures of Michelle Merritt. You can imagine my surprise that morning when I opened my inbox. I was not aware of these. It turns out there was a member of parliament that was involved in a relationship, an affair, that the third party found these photos and threatened to publish them. And this was all over the media in the UK, and it continued for several weeks. And what I can say about that is that I popped up first in any search, despite all of that press coverage in the UK. Why? Because I had been managing my image and my name, right? My thought leadership was in the right places. My LinkedIn profile was correct. I have the Michelle Merritt LinkedIn URL because I've had my account since 2003. So I have managed my online presence and specifically my LinkedIn profile in such a way that I still appear at the top of all of the searches. And there are several other Michelle Merritts out there doing great things, right? One's a college professor, one's a real estate professional, things like that. So I don't mind being associated with them, but it really was an eye-opener that morning. So making sure that all of that's in place at the top portion of your profile will make a big difference in the impact.
So I think there are two takeaways here. One is to set a Google alert for your own name.
Yes.
Please.
Well, I mean, seriously, that's how I saw other Julie Livingstons out there. And one is to customize your LinkedIn URL. Mine, for example, is Julie Liv Comms, because I'm a communications professional.
Yes, that makes sense.
And so that's why I changed it, because there's a Julie Livingston photographer and a historian and, a lot of other people. So that's important. So, okay, so making our way down the profile, let's get to the LinkedIn featured section. Now, this is like a theatrical marquee, right? Where you have the
I love
ability to have a slideshow that visually communicates, your key accomplishments. Sometimes when I do my ghostwriting work for clients, I populate their featured section with their latest post. But if you tell us about how somebody going for a board role should really look at their featured section, because it is different.
Deborah, do you want to take that?
You know what? I'll give this one to you because I know you've done it more recently too.
Okay. And Julie and I had lots of conversations around this.
Yeah.
Exactly.
With our mutual clients. So, making sure that your featured section highlights the things that a board cares about. I always say when it comes to your resume is about you, but not for you. It's for the reader. The same is true with your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is about you, but not for you. It's for the reader. So what is your featured set? What does your reader want to know about, right? There might be awards, for example, recent awards. There might be some thought leadership, whether that's an article that you have been, somewhere where you've been published in Forbes, for example, like Deborah, something like that. What are the things that your reader needs to know right from
Maybe
the
you've
beginning?
been profiled recently in a business
Right.
publication.
Absolutely. And so those are the kinds of things you want to make sure are at the top of your profile. So for example, if you go out and look at my profile right now, my featured section often has the LinkedIn Lives that Deborah and I do. That's one option that you can do, because
Mine
I know
as well. Right.
Right. Because people want to see who they're working with, right? They want to get a feel for the personality and everything else, and the recordings allow for that. So you can choose what you want to put. And what I would say is don't have a dozen things up there. Have 3 or 4 things. People aren't going to keep scrolling for very long.
They're
So
not.
this is the highlight reel dialed up to 11.
I love that. That makes so much sense. Okay, so then you get to the skills and you get to the about section. Oh my God, how could I forget that? So you have what, 2,600 characters to fill in. How should you, what's the strategy there? How should you approach the about section?
Yeah, a few things you want to think about in the about section. First of all, think about it like your resume in terms of leave some white space. Don't have just giant blocks of text, because no one's going to read those giant blocks of text, right? We're going to skim. And so if you've got important information in there, it's going to get lost in the details. And so we want to make it really easy to skim through in a way that a reader can easily digest it. I joke about our clients' resumes, but it's the same for LinkedIn. The only person who's going to read this word for word are probably your resume or LinkedIn profile writer and your mom, and no one else cares. And so we want to make it really easy to go through. And so think about that first, few sentences are going to be what people see, and then to click more, right? Not everyone's going to click to see more. And so you want to get all of the most pertinent information out in the first couple of lines, right? So, board candidate, here's the kinds of, roles that you'd be uniquely qualified to deliver on, just like your headline, but a little deeper and more conversational, right? And then make it in first person. We're trying to make a human connection.
That is huge. I read so many profiles where it's in the third person and it sounds so strange.
It does. It's so cold. LinkedIn is about making a human connection. All the advice Michelle gave on the headshot is absolutely true. And the purpose is, and it has to be like, collarbones up, close up to your face. And the reason is we want the audience to make a human connection with us. And they can't do that if they can't see the features of our face. And same thing with our profile. No one's going to read a third person dry profile about yourself. It sounds more important. It sounds, a little more formal, but that's not the appropriate choice for LinkedIn. So find a conversational tone for these things, and then focus on your board specific skills. And this is something Michelle and I do an entire presentation on. We're doing actually tomorrow for a different group, to dig into what are those board specific skills that transition your work from a tactical doer to a strategic advisor, right? Those skills are going to be different. You're not being brought on to lead teams or to, specifically drive initiatives, things like that. You're driving strategy for an organization, and that's a different skill set. And so rethink about the skills you're bringing to the table, and then add some career highlights that speak to those things. And then at the bottom is where I like to add some keywords and some skills kind of with the pipes between each one, just to kind of add some more keywords in there without it cluttering up the rest of your narrative. Anything you would add to that, Michelle?
The only thing I would add, Deborah, because I think you've done a beautiful job of covering it, is be mindful of operations and tactical related accomplishments, right? Mm-hmm. So as you pointed out, the roles for a board member are different, right? There's the adage of nose in, hands out, right? So we want to make sure that what you're highlighting, and this is really true when we're talking about people who are COOs.
Yes.
Right. They want to talk about all their operations roles. There's not normally an operations role in a board of directors. because you're not responsible for the operations. You're responsible for the strategy. So you really have to take a step back. And this is where working with a professional writer often makes a huge impact, because you want to step back and re-examine what you've done through the lens of the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the same for CHROs and chief legal officers or in general counsel. We get this a lot where it has to be, so for a COO, a CHRO, a chief legal officer, it has to be your functional expertise plus your business leadership. It has to be and what, because typically there's only one spot for a lawyer, maybe one spot for an HR leader on a board. And so you really have to show what beyond your functional expertise you bring.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's important. What about LinkedIn skills? I know that helps with search, doesn't it?
It certainly can. So what I tell people is, think again about the skills from the standpoint of what the board is looking for, right? If you're building your profile to attract attention from the board, your profile is about you, but not for you. So what are they looking for, right? They're looking for strategy. They're looking for optimization. They may be looking at understanding revenue targets. M&A is a huge thing, right? So any sort of mergers, acquisitions, divestitures, onboarding of new companies, all of those sort of strategies are things you want to highlight. You can choose, I believe it's now up to 100 skills on LinkedIn. Do not feel like you have to go through and pick 100 of them, right? I have had executive level clients lose a lot of time in their life by thinking they had to go through and pick all that out. The only two that really matter in the list are the first two. And there is a way, once you're in that skills section, to put them in order so that your most important two are at the top. Do not spend time trying to reorder the bottom 98. They don't matter, the order. But the top two will actually appear on your main profile. So make sure those first two listed are the two you want to be most known for.
Okay, so moving further downward, what about the experience section?
Right. So the experience section is one of those that I always remind people that your resume your LinkedIn profile should not be a duplicate of your resume, but your resume is going to inform the content for your LinkedIn profile, especially your board resume, right? So again, keeping in mind the accomplishments and the achievements, the bullet points, as Deborah's pointed out, are there really to make it easy to skim, and accomplishment-focused information that is generated in a way that gets the attention of a board or a board recruiter.
And is it always easier to get a board role when you've already been on a board? Or do recruiters look for candidates who have the potential to be a really solid board member as well?
Yeah, it's really hard. The hardest search is going to be your search for the first board seat. After that, it does become much easier. And especially working with a board level recruiter. There's not a lot of great data on this, but from what we can tell, only about 15% of board seats are filled through board level recruiters. And they're being filled by candidates who have sat in a board seat, right? Because it's an easier sell into a company to send someone who's been there, done that. So when you're looking for your first board seat, it is going to heavily be focused on networking, right? And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that, but you need to think about, there's pathways to the board room, right? Where you can start, a lot of women specifically want to spend a ton of time in nonprofit board work to then move into for-profit board work. Unfortunately, that's not a great stepping stone usually. It's
interesting.
It's not typically a great stepping stone unless it's a large nonprofit board, well known, or you have fiduciary responsibility of a large budget, things like that. But otherwise, it really doesn't translate. And so instead, we want to think about networking into advisory board roles. They're typically unpaid. You may be able to negotiate some equity, but it's easier to get on. And then from the advisory seat, then you can make the case that a founder or CEO, values your opinion, wanted your strategy and expertise on their board, and then you can start looking for private company board seats, and then work your way up. But it's really kind of a step-by-step approach that is heavily going to be focused on networking.
So, what about this? How do you turn on the switch that says open for recruiters only?
Right. So there's a place on your profile that will ask you, it'll say open to ... There's a button. And you have the ability to click on that and make your selections, right? You can say open to work, you can say open to recruiters,
Okay,
that
good.
kind of thing. In almost all cases, there's always an exception to a rule somewhere, but in almost all cases, we avoid the open to work banner that's there. But we will encourage people to be open to recruiters, that kind of thing, so that a recruiter, again, who's looking for a potential board member may see it out there.
And how important is the Get Verified thing? I know I keep being asked for it. I haven't done it yet, but is it worthwhile? Does it set you apart?
I think it's one of those things. If you're trying to define your name, own your name, and make sure that you are set apart from other people, both in your industry and who may share your name or profession, it can be an important piece to that puzzle. Deborah, do you agree?
Easy to do. Yeah, I did it as well. Same thing. I don't want, Michelle and I now do so much public speaking that, I had a concern that there would be copycats of like my name and face out there somewhere. You know what I mean? And so I did it. It was easy to do. Anyone who knows me knows that I have a deep hatred for paperwork and forms, but it was not hard.
Great. Okay. Well, ladies, this has been a fantastic conversation with so many tips and takeaways. I mean, I've gotten a bunch myself, which is really wonderful. Did we forget anything?
There's one thing, Julie, that I'll share real quickly, and that is your activity section of your profile.
Great.
All of your activity on LinkedIn is public. So when you are commenting, if you're choosing to engage in something heavily political, or in choosing to post a comment that might not be so positive, things like that, remember that all of that is public.
Yes.
And also LinkedIn just launched a new feature in the activity section where if you click on the pencil in your activity section, you can actually choose what the person sees first, right? So you can choose, it's brand new.
Did not know that.
So you can choose all videos so that all your video posts are first, or your newsletter is first, or your comments are first, or your posts are first. And it gives you a box that you can check. So right now, mine is sitting at all of my video posts because I do a lot of video on LinkedIn.
That's great. Oh, that's really important.
That is brand new. I mean, I learned that this past Thursday. So
and it may not even be rolled out nationally. I mean,
right.
That's how they do things.
Right.
But that's such a good point, because when someone sends me a connection request and I don't know that person, I first look at mutual connections and then I go straight to their activity section, because I want to see, are they active on LinkedIn and are they active in a way that I would want to be associated with? And that's the absolute first thing I do when I look at evaluating connections. So you can assume other people are too, especially if you're looking to grow your network.
How can people get in touch with you both? Is it, dare I say, LinkedIn?
We both share an endless amount of content on these topics for executive job seekers and for board candidates. And so please do follow us both on LinkedIn. We also have a bi-weekly LinkedIn Live that we do on a variety of topics related to this. So please reach out to us, and you can absolutely learn more regularly. Michelle posts every day.
Right. And the other thing I will say is check our website as well, dscareermanagement.com. If you have questions or are interested in working with us, you can certainly book a call with our client success director, Carmen, and she can walk you through our timeline, services, fees, all the things you need for your unique project.
Thank you both again. This is really solid. Great information for all of our members. Everyone else, I'll see you next time on another episode of Quorum Live, but check out the quoruminitiative.com, our website, for more information about upcoming events, including our annual retreat, which is coming up this May, June. And so that's something you won't want to miss, so that you can really network and connect with other Quorum members and learn more about climbing the corporate ladder. Again, ladies, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.